Guy, come here. Wood chase, eastbound, Jefferson, Woodville.
Fox tonight, shoot or don't shoot?
I don't want to shoot you, man. I don't want to shoot you.
This is what the use of force training is designed to eliminate.
So, there's a lot of things in the media about use of force and police use of force specifically. There's a lot of videos out there that, show police using force. And so the question arises is, why do police use force? How often do police use force? And so I think it's important for our community to know and understand why we use force and how often we use force here at the Wausau Police Department. So I want to talk about those things a little bit. Certainly one of our goals here is when we interact with citizens, we want to, as much as possible, use communication skills, use our abilities to connect with somebody verbally so that we can de-escalate a situation so we never have to use force. That's our ultimate goal is to never have to use force. Sometimes it's inevitable though. There's a debate out in society about police are warriors and they're militarized and that leads to too much force and excessive force. But we should be guardians and we should not have to use force and we should de-escalate and do our best to never use force, right? And I think that's true that we are guardians and that we should never have to use force if at all possible, and that should be our absolute last resort. At the end of the day, though, there are times where we have to be warriors. We have to go into that situation, and our de-escalation skills, our communication skills don't work. And we have to go hands-on. We have to arrest people, take them to jail. We have to stop them from harming other people in our community, stop them from harming police officers. So there are times where that is a necessity. So we do train for those situations, and we don't want them to happen, but it's inevitable in law enforcement that we will at some point have to use force. We try to train on our communication skills, verbalize things, try to de-escalate situations as best we can, try to create time and distance so that we don't press a situation to turn into a use of force situation earlier than maybe what we'd have to. But sometimes we have to engage a person, and it results in a use of force incident. So I want to talk a little bit about how often we use force. So we respond to about 40,000 calls for service every year. In those 40,000 calls, many of those calls are 2-officer calls or 3-officer calls. When we go to a search warrant, we send 6 to 8 officers at least to make sure that we can secure the premises and make sure that we can handle anything that we encounter in those situations. So out of those 100,000 officer responses, the potential exists that we're going to have to use force whenever we go there. But out of those 100,000 responses, we use force very, very few times. So, for example, we used pepper spray 6 times in 2018. We've used we deployed a taser 8 times last year, and about 50 times we had to go hands-on with somebody and maybe decentralize them or hold them up against a wall or hold them up against a car to control their behavior. So way under 0.1% of the time that we're out there interacting with our community do we have to use force. And I really think that's a testament to 2 things. It's a testament, number 1, to the people that we hire and that we employ as police officers. They are outstanding individuals who have great skills and abilities to connect with somebody, to do just the right things in almost every situation, not to have to use force. Secondarily, I would say that our training staff is very, very good. We have use of force instructors, defense and arrest tactics and firearms. Even emergency vehicle operations is an important component of how we go about things. We talk about how we interact with people communication-wise in professional communications. We train on how we should engage in a traffic stop so that we can do everything that we can as we approach a situation, how we communicate with a person during a situation, and then everything that we can do to use the least amount of force possible in a situation. And our trainers are very, very good at helping officers get to a point where they're professional and they handle situations very well. So we only have to use a taser 8 times in an entire calendar year out of over 100,000 officer responses. I think that's a testament to the people that we have here at the Wausau Police Department. So I think you're right that the perception of, society as generally and our community generally is probably that use of force statistics are a lot higher. And I think that's a result of a lot of media attention, social media attention to law enforcement use of force. Because let's face it, when a police officer has to use force, it isn't pretty. Right? When we use force, it's because we have to control a subject. Sometimes it's because they have a weapon. Sometimes it's because they're acting in a way that makes us believe that they have a weapon. And we can't delay, and we have to use enough force to stop that person in that moment, so that if they do have a weapon or they intend on using a weapon, that they can't access it, that we can stop them from doing that. And it's a safety thing. We track, in terms of use of force, we track everything beyond compliant handcuffing. So sometimes that is, somebody isn't actively aggressing towards us, which is, oftentimes when we'd use pepper spray or taser deployment or something of that nature, or go hands-on and put them on the ground so we can secure them. We might use compliance hold. So they're not actively resisting, but we're putting them in a compliance hold so they don't get the idea that they're going to resist further, or we can make sure that we have them under control. So that we count that as a use of force. Of course, our firearm deployments, if we utilize our firearm in the course of duty, we track every single time that we do that. And, we do use them to dispatch animals, so we track all of those. Anytime that we direct a firearm at somebody in the course of our duty, we track all of those. And, so anytime we're doing a high-risk traffic stop, we're executing a search warrant, we're responding to a call where somebody is thought to have a firearm or weapon of any sort, we're gonna have our firearm out, and we track all of those to make sure we know how often we're doing that, and we review each and every one of those cases to make sure that officers are responding within policy and effectively and safely. So anytime there's a complaint, any kind of complaint against a police officer, we track that, we document that information here, and we hold on to that. And then we watch for trends with specific officers and how they're going about their work. So in terms of an excessive use of force complaint against a police officer, we take that very seriously. If a citizen calls in and makes that complaint, of course we wear body cameras, so that is definitely a key component of our review of that case. We always have a supervisor review a complaint against an officer, and especially as it comes to excessive use of force. We have our use of force instructors that will take a look at that to, analyze it compared to, the state expectations and guidelines for use of force, and we'll make an educated decision based on what the officer was perceiving at the time and how the officer responded to the threat that existed at the time. So we take those very seriously. We track them. I don't remember a time where we had an excessive use of force complaint that was substantiated. So they're very few and far between. In fact, just a complaint that an officer used excessive force within the Wausau Police Department is very few and far between. They're rare. Body cameras, they really help us out in a lot of ways. I mean, certainly they document what it is that happens. So when there is that complaint against a police officer, we can go to the body camera. And oftentimes in a use of force scenario, there's more than one police officer there. So now we have multiple angles typically to see this use of force incident unfold. So it's very helpful in that regard. But we use our body cam footage for videos to share with our community, like we'll do in this very video, to show them this is what a use of force scenario looks like. This is what a justified use of force scenario looks like. But we also use it for training for our police officers. In service and throughout the year, we'll share different videos saying this is a good use of force, or this is a good way to communicate and de-escalate a situation. This is a good use of, creating distance to give yourself time to make a decision and not to force somebody else into making a decision that might result in a use of force. So we use the videos in a wide variety of ways, and they've been very, very beneficial for us.